Welcome to the Author to Authority podcast. And today I've got a unique topic for you, one we probably haven't covered too often on the Author to Authority podcast. And today we're going to look at bouncing back from failure. And I know it's not something you want to hear, but failure is a part of entrepreneurship. And if you want to succeed, you got to learn how to bounce back fast. So I want to welcome Tyler Tapp to the show. He is the failure coach who knows how to screw up one step at a time. With his resilient spirit and mantra of onward, Tyler has learned how to make all kinds of mistakes and still keep moving forward. Now, growing up, Tyler saw his dad struggle with a few missing tools that hindered his entrepreneurial success and wished someone would have taken him under their wing to help him succeed. This ignited Tyler's mission to help people like his dad navigate the pitfalls of business growth. But you know what? Tyler can't do this alone. He's on a quest to gather 1,000 of the world's most amazing entrepreneurs. I love that. A legion of giving individuals who aren't afraid to fail together and lift each other up. Together, they're changing the game and rewriting the most business fail paradigm. And so we want to invite you to enjoy Tyler on his quest. And together, let's fail forward and say it out loud. Onward. Welcome to the show, Tyler.
Onward, my friends. Thank you so much for having me here. Thanks for reading. You read that way better than I read it myself.
I do a lot of these interviews.
That'll get you right there.
The only time I mess it up is if I don't read it before we do the show.
I do get that very much so. Reading 101, right? Or reading out loud 101. Read it twice.
Now, Tyler and I actually back in January at PodFest. And I've got to admit, I mean, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you've heard me talk about PodFest. If you are in the podcasting world, whether you guest on podcasts or you host a podcast, PodFest is just the place. It's one of the best conferences I have ever been to. And the community spirit there is amazing.
Next
I have not experienced anything like that.
Yeah, but no, PodFest is fantastic. So I appreciate the pitch, even though I don't own it. I wish I owned it, and we could say I did. But PodFest is fantastic. The podcasting community is really tight knit. You don't realize how small it is, even though it's like seems like it's everywhere, right? Which is a good thing. That means we're good at getting the word out, right? But PodFest is where you get to meet the people, right? Like Alex Sanfilippo, like one of the best out there in the podcasting world. He's just walking around in a suit jacket, talking to everyone he sees.
And that's true. And that was the thing I loved about it, was the fact that there was no dividing line between sort of the haves and the have-nots, between the really big podcasters, who have, thousands of downloads an episode, to the very newest podcaster who hasn't even started their podcast yet. Like, you could go up and talk to and that impressed me, because I've been to so many conferences, where you never get a chance to talk to people like Alex, people who have been down the road and, ask questions. Yeah, just amazing. So anyway, if you want to find out more about PodFest, just they do have events throughout the year, so you can check it out. Yeah. Now, Tyler, this is your first time on the Author to Authority podcast, so I would love for you to just share more about your story and, how, I mean, I know you saw your dad go through failure as an entrepreneur, but how did you become the failure coach?
By default, I screwed up a lot. Figured out how to get over it. No, I did. It really started with my dad. I saw that a lot. I mean, I had a lot of insecurity that most people do, right? You're a child. That's the way it goes. But my dad's been my hero my whole life. I watched him literally busting his butt, just trying as hard as he possibly could. And genuinely feel like he was just missing a couple little things. Like the further I've gotten into my business career, wow, he really was just missing a couple things. And if someone would have popped their arm around him, the sky would have been the limit for him. Right. But he was always capped out. So for myself, after seeing that, so I ended up getting into the restaurant world. So I worked as a restaurant manager, owner, operator at certain times. Just kind of depends on what part of my career you're looking at. I ran restaurants for about 10 years and I ended up working with teenagers, most of that teenagers and young adults, most of that time. And I just really found a love for helping them like figure out how to like screw up the right way. Because you're in a restaurant and I was in a pizza buffet of all places. So it was very forgiving as a job goes. You could make mistakes, but it was still pizza. Like my motto was like it's pizza. Like it doesn't matter what you do that they're going to eat. But for myself, the way that got like translated into this, like becoming the failure coach was I just found that something I've just always had a natural resilience for myself. I've always been pretty positive. My dad may argue otherwise, right? We can see, we'll ask him later if you bring him on, right? But I've always been pretty positive and just been able to recover. But I've had a lot of things that I've screwed up pretty bad in my life over the course of things, whether that's in business or my personal life. I got lucky, I would say, being born with a natural positive outset or mindset, but I realized that that's something I can actually hone in and get better at, with saying, hey, how can I fail quicker? Right? Like, how can I get myself in situations where I'm going to screw up, right? And so that I can stand up and walk out of it quickly. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I think for me, like the restaurant world was fantastic for that because it was a very low impact failures, right? Like if I stuff up for people or if I screwed thing up, generally speaking, it wasn't the worst thing. Like I made mistakes that cost tens of thousands of dollars. Don't get me wrong, right? It was fun because I started realizing that like your mistakes don't define who you are unless you choose to do that, right? To take those mistakes and make them define who you are in the way you want them to write your own story because of your mistakes. So that's really where it came from. I was just making lots of mistakes and realizing I wanted to write my story a way that would work out for me.
I spent first at least 12, probably to 15 years of my entrepreneurial career just failing.
Yep.
I didn't know what to do. And like your dad, I just needed a few tools. And it was amazing because I was never afraid to ask. But you know what frustrated me is I would be working with someone to start a business and they promised they would mentor me. And they didn't.
Yep.
They just left me out in the cold to try and figure it out.
Yep.
And I got so frustrated because I knew I could do it if someone would just teach me how. I wasn't afraid to do anything. Like if you told, okay, nothing immoral or illegal. Okay, I do have boundaries.
But some caveats there.
But like teach me how to sell, teach me how to run a business, teach me how to do customer service. Like all of these things. The sales was the big part for me. Teach me how. Like just someone teach me how to sell and I'll do it. If you told me go talk to that person, I would go talk to that person. I would just tell me what to say, please. Yeah. When I finally did have someone who was mentoring me at first, I just did everything exactly the way. I was a little parrot. I sat on her hip for 2 years.
Oh.
And I did everything exactly the way she did it. Now, about 6 months in, I was starting to get my own style and flair to it. But in the beginning, I just did it the way she did it because I needed to learn. And she was willing to teach me and let me study underneath her and watch how she did things and how she handled such situations. And I learned so much. I can't say that I had immediate success, but at least I was on the road from failure to sort of path.
Yep. I love that. Let me ask you this. I know you're the one supposed to ask the questions, but I'm going to ask you a question. Where did you find a coach or someone to, because I feel like that's a hard thing for.
Well, I joined a direct sales company and I can't mention the name because of copyright. I had been in several direct sales companies and I finally found one. It was a company that actually had district managers. So each geography area had a manager and it was the manager if you were willing to teach and train you how to run that business.
Wow. Look at.
And it was free.
That's glorious.
And there weren't too many people that wanted to take advantage of the training. So I said, I will go with you anywhere. I will spend hours with you a day, teach me. And I did. I learned how to do it. Now, everything didn't run smoothly and perfect. And there were a lot of hiccups along the way. And, things happened. just kind of crushed me a bit in the
Mm-hmm.
end. But I learned such valuable skills during that. And when I started to become a publisher, all of those things that I had failed at and had finally learned, it was like all the lessons that I had learned over about the course of, my daughter's 29. She was, so it's 27 years. Okay. But
yeah.
So it's 7-8 years. So let's say around 20 years. It took those first 20 years. Now, it's not that I never earned any money or anything. I wouldn't say it was success. It was all training. But then when I started the publishing company, it was like everything that I had learned fell together all at once. And I was able to take all of those lessons and finally have a business that I felt like I was succeeding.
Mm-hmm. I love that because it's funny. I think, if we're talking on the note of failure and screwing up, right? And mm-hmm. what you can do to move forward, the best thing that you can do is turn around and look and say, you know what? Like, why can't everything behind me is training, right? Yeah. And get this notion of success out of my head. Right now, you need to have dreams and visions. That's essential. Like, you are where you are because you're supposed to be where you are. So just look behind mm-hmm. you and say, what did I learn from behind? Right? I think as an entrepreneur, it's really easy to be so focused on how imperfect we are because we see Joe Schmo that is our ideal person. Like, oh, if I was like them, oh, that's exactly who I want to be. Be like, you're not them. That's not who you are. Right? You are you. So look behind you and say, what's been prepping me for? Yeah. Because I am where I'm at. What's been prepping me for right now? And if you'll do that, like I would say part of your meditation or whatever you do in the morning times, prayer, whatever it is for you, take a few minutes and be, okay, why am I at where I'm at? And how did I get here? Why? And what am I going to do with it?
I couldn't agree with you more. One thing I would add to that is stop looking at Joe Schmo because first of all, he's probably further down the road than you. And secondly, you don't know how many years it took him of failure before he became the overnight success, quote unquote, for those who are listening on the podcast.
I love that because that really is like comparing is probably one of the biggest things that makes us think that failure, right? Because we look at us like, oh man, I screwed up. I'm not as good as I want to be. I'm not as good as the Joneses, right? Quote unquote. Again, for those listening, I'm not as good as the Joneses, whoever that is to you. It's like, stop comparing yourself. Like, you are you. You're at where you're at. Be there, and it's okay. Like you're supposed to be there, even if it sucks, even if it's not good. You're supposed to be there. And you're supposed to learn something from it.
And I think we have to redefine what is success. Yeah, something that Ross, my husband and I have friends who are missionaries mm-hmm. who go to many different parts of the world. Okay. And, when they come back and they tell you that, people don't eat 3 meals a day, they don't have houses to live in, they don't even have toilets or running water. The electricity is on off most of the time. Mm-hmm. You start to redefine what success is.
Yeah. No kidding.
When you eat 3 meals a day and you live in a house, you have running water, hydro, and internet.
Yep.
You've got clothes on your back, your house. Okay, here in North America, and especially winter, it might not be hot, but at least it's warm. You are better off than most of the people in the world.
Yep. And I love that you're bringing that up because I think one of the most, I say that a lot. You guys probably heard that 10 times already. I say one of the most important things is
potential.
Yeah, exactly. It's that gratitude, right? Of truly being like, it could be worse, right? Like I could be in a way different situation, and being grateful for where it just opens up your mind for the potential of what comes in front of you.
And the thing, I've always reminded myself of the fact that I've earned money in my business, whether it be hundreds or thousands or more than that, right? But most entrepreneurs fail before they ever even make $1,000. So if you've made $1,000 in your business, you are in that top percent. You may not be making much more than that right now. Don't stop. Yep. You've got.
Yeah, well, and that it's taking those little wins, right? So that's one of my things that I go around teaching people is you've got to like learn to just like thrive off of those micro wins, right?
Yeah.
Because there's going to be a lot, right? And something that may not seem like a win, you need to learn to look at it as, right? Even you waking up this morning and actually continuing your business, that's like genuinely a win. If that's as small as you have to be able to like keep yourself going, you're like, I got back up and got on my computer today. I went to my car wash. I went out the door instead of letting it close down today. Like, it's a win.
Exactly. Exactly. And something else I've learned, especially, when you're more like a solopreneur, freelancer, professional consultant, one of those business where it's mostly you, it's the consistency that builds the business. So if you got up today and you did the things that you were supposed to do, that's a win. Now, we don't always see the results right away. Like I've learned in my business, I've got about a 90-day cycle. I've gone through some really difficult times or just through some real big transitions in my life where I couldn't focus on the business. And I've learned that for my business, it takes about 90 for me to get back up and moving, having regular sales come in, that kind of stuff. That's how long it takes. So I've learned now that, when I've gone through those times, like last year, I went through a huge transition in my life, moved across the country. So, there was about 5 months there where I wasn't doing, moved across the country to Nova Scotia, Canada. 2 weeks later, I heard it.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Right. So, it took some time to, get settled in, get recovered. Now, thankfully, we didn't really have any damage or anything, but we had no power for a while, and just the emotional shock of it. I mean, let me tell you, I do not want to live through a hurricane again. That was not fun.
I can imagine. That was probably terrible.
But the thing I learned is that, you have to learn what your sales cycle is. How long does it take for you to generate leads and then convert those leads, right? So if it's 30 days, then you can't quit at day one. If it's 90 days, you can't quit at the end of May.
Yep. Well, I love that you're bringing that up because that's such a like life principle, even though that's so directly tied to business, but it's funny. You go in cycles. I mean, we know it. Like if we turn around and look backwards, like, yeah, you go through cycles, we get it. But it's funny if you're in business, right? So we're talking business right now. If you're in business and truly are like, man, I just can't seem to like get this edge that I need, right? You've got to take a step back and look and be like, what's happened? Even if it's only been a month, like maybe a business for a very short amount of time or a year, right? Which is, I think a lot of us discredit that a year is a pretty long time to be in business, right? Like look back and say, you know what? Like put your morning aside, spend 4 hours and sit down and just map out how the last chunk of time is for you, whether that works for you the last month, year, however long you need. And look back and be like, what is the cycle of my, and look back at that and look at that and be hopeful in that. Because if you're coming through that, you're saying, okay, once I figure out the cycle of my business, I can look forward and say, okay, if I do this action, it's going to have a reaction or whatever the right terminology is. It's have a reaction in 30 days, in 90 days, whatever it is for you. Because then that gives you something to look forward to where you're not so like, it's not happening today, right? Which is entrepreneur, I feel like we're always in that boat of today's not working, or today, right?
I had one other thought I wanted to share with you, and I'm interested to hear your perspective on it. The other thing I realized too was sometimes I was doing enough action, but I wasn't doing the right actions. I've learned a lot about thinking about, Pareto's rule where you get 80% of your results from 20% of what you're doing. So, what maybe you're doing enough action, but maybe you're just not focused in on the right ones.
Yep. I love that. Well, let me tell a story about this. So in our company in the last year, we have changed so much, makes most of our clients and our employees want to go crazy. But the reason I tell you that is we've spent a lot of time looking back and being like, wow, we weren't doing the right action, right, to get the result. Yeah. And even with all these iterations we've done of what we're doing, and we finally landed on, truly, we've just been a research in the last year, which if anyone's out there, your first year or two, you're in research and development. I don't care what you're doing. Like you're, yep. and beyond. But so for us, the reason I tell this story going through all this, finally landed on, you're like, you know what? We've not ever had a really good sales system, which you think we would have like dawned on us, a long time ago that like your sales system is truly the problem. But we've just been so good at getting referrals for so long that we just have kind of ridden that pony for the last few years. I realize like it's been 7 years for us truly of riding the referral pony. And we're always doing these actions. We're always, super busy, right? We've got 3 people in our executive team and 10 employees. We're just moving like constantly. But then we were like, you know what? Like we need to get a sales system, right? And it has been hilarious since we've started focusing on this. Oh, the right action provides the right result. Even our company's not been like drastically like different than it was in any way, shape, or form, but we've been decreasing risks and increasing profits because, even though that doesn't make a whole lot of sense without way more backstory, but increasing those profits by truly being like, you know what, like we just need to get our sales system figured out and dialed in. And it's made all the difference for us. So if you're spinning your wheels, I think the lesson that I truly were, if I were to like teach someone from what we've done from that story, stop, hold on for a minute, like pause. in life and in business, especially as an entrepreneur, we run forward so fast that we forget to, like I said, this is like the first thing I brought up when we started talking. Pause for a second, turn around and look backwards. Look where you've been at, and like, what are the successes? What are the failures? What can we learn? How can that propel us forward? But if you don't take a minute, and you cannot move forward in any sort of positive manner that's going to truly make a long-term difference for you.
It's funny you say that. One of my clients, Mike Garris, we did his book, Can I Borrow Your Car? Which is all about running your business on referrals. So
Love
really amazing book. But one of the things that I love about my clients and, you guys as podcast guests is I learn so much from you guys. I get free education from my clients and my podcast guests. But I remember one thing that Mike said to me, and he said to me, Kim, you need to once a month and take 90 minutes. And you just, no phone, no computer, just a pen and you're going to take that 90 minutes and you're going to think about and you just write down everything that comes to mind in that time. And you just think about all the different areas of your business. And then you can, after that, obviously you take it and you sort it and all that. He says, but you gain so much clarity by just stopping.
It's such a funny, simple principle, is it not? I can't tell you the amount of I've done that. I feel like I actually figured this about 12 or 13 years ago when I was just in my early 20s. Was out doing missionary work, right? And it was 6 a.m. till 8 or 10, 12 at night, whatever it was. All day, every day. You slept for 5 hours if you're lucky. And I realized I was talking to one of the leaders in our group, and I was like, I know we're not supposed to take naps, but like, I'm going to start taking a 20-minute nap every, right? Yeah. And I told him, and he said that he told this to me. I don't remember exactly. I wish I word his like wording that he used, but he said something to the effect of, Tyler, is it better for you to run at 30% for 10 hours than it is at 100% for 3 hours? And I was like, okay, fine. I was like, I 100% get that. And as an entrepreneur and in this, becoming the failure coach that I've become, that's one of the biggest lessons I teach people is like, just freaking stop for a minute. Like the more you run around with like your head cut off like a chicken, you're just going to keep bleeding everywhere and it's going to get all muddy. So pause for a minute. Just pause for a second. So I love that you brought that up. I love that we've been talking about that because it really is my favorite thing is like, if it's you sitting down and meditating take time every day to, right. And if you're not doing that, if you get nothing out of this episode, that's what you need to take away today is for whatever amount of time works for you. If you need to be 15 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, you're working 12, knock is what I'm going to say. Stop, pause for 15 to 30 minutes a day and just think.
It's funny you say that because I had a massive wake-up call in September of 2020 when I was in emergency with my heart not beating. The top of my heart was beating at a different pace than the bottom of my heart, and it was going about 170 beats per. And that was pretty scary.
Yeah.
So they started doing this, and I ended up having 2 more episodes. I had one in November and then one the next April. And they started this. So they did find I had high blood pressure. They did every heart test imaginable. The one good thing about living in Canada is I didn't pay for any. It's part of our healthcare system. So they put me through every single heart test they could find. You know what they figured out? They said, Kim, you've got way too much stress in your life.
Yep.
Because there was nothing wrong with my heart. And that was a huge wake-up call for me to start slowing down. I would wolf food down. I'd work through lunches. I was working a lot of evenings. And I find now I have to stop. So I try to take an hour at lunch. I'll read, I'll watch TV, I'll play games on my phone. I eat my lunch slowly. And I don't work during that time. And in the evenings, I do have to work the occasional evening. I try not to work in the evening because my body basically told me you got to slow down or it's going to stop.
Yep. I love that you got that. That you had to, get that by such a physical trauma, right? Like that's terrifying. But I think that's one of the lessons from today is takeaways, do that. Like for me, just another quick story. My family life was fine. It wasn't, I've never had a terrible family life, but we were having a pretty rough patch, my wife and I, about last November. And I just had the realization, I was actually talking to a counselor and I was like, I'm trying to make my family work. And she's like, well, how late are you working every day? And I was like, okay, fine. Don't ask that question. I'm not working till 8:00. I swear every day or 10:00. But I literally at that day, I was like 5:00. I am done. It doesn't matter what client problem is. It doesn't matter what breaks. It can wait till tomorrow. And I'm out here to be a survivor and to tell her that that has changed my family's life and mine more than anything else we've ever tried. Is I was just like, I am done at 5:00. Right.
You know what I learned? When you're on your deathbed, it's not your clients and it's not your customers who are going to be standing or not standing there. It'll be your family, and they are your legacy. They are the ones who will, continue on everything that you've done and who you are. And they're the ones who will remember you and carry you. But if you aren't a part of their life, guess what happens?
They're gone.
Or they're standing at the deathbed going, oh, I can't wait for this. Go good. Finally, he's gone, right?
Yep, yep, exactly. Pull the plug. Less work I have to do. I love it. It's so, today we can stamp this one at the end here, but genuine stop. I don't care what you're dealing with in your life. Even if it's just a few minutes that you can take. So I get that sometimes your life's crazy and there's nothing you can do about a 12 or 10 hour, your waking hours controllable. Just pause for any bit of time that you can take and start making a consistent part of your day. It's going to change everything.
Yeah. We got about 5 minutes left, Tyler. So I'm going to ask you the question we talked about. So first of all, talk about your podcast and then I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah. Okay. So my podcast is called The Lucky Titans Second in Command. It's for coaches and agencies that are looking to just level up their game, right? I interview almost exclusively coaches and other agency owners so that they can provide their tips and tricks to help us. That podcast stemmed for me from learning for myself that I'm the creative visionary. I don't like and don't want to be, we call it dancing monkey in a company. I don't want to be the dancing monkey. I truly thrive in a second in command role where I can go be the leader of somebody's army and help them buy into someone else's vision. And so it stemmed from that. It just stemmed from being I want to get that message out to people. And I know coaches and consultants are the ones that help people learn. So why not interview?
That is awesome. Love it. Okay. Here's what was the good, the bad, and the ugly of starting and running that podcast?
Ooh, good question. Getting good. This is so funny. So most people probably don't know this on here. In our company, we're podcast coaches. That's what we do. We teach people how to use podcasting to level up high ticket offers. I've been coaching people for years that if you don't get started, it's never going to get started. I just barely started my podcast this February. I've been coaching people. If you don't get started today, it's never going to happen. And guys, it took me a lot of years to get there. So that's the ugly. Honestly, at the end of the day, we really struggle with that. But like, oh man. Mm-hmm. So this is something I am actually genuinely not a great like worder. I suck at speaking. I really have to slow myself down. I have ADHD like every other human does nowadays, but I talk really, really fast. And I have a hard time slowing my mind down so that I can actually keep up with it. But podcasting has so much to help. This is just like on a very personal level for me. So I made a goal this April. So we're at the tail end of April here, where I was going to do 100 podcast interviews in 30 days. So terrible goal, right? I'm in the middle of it now, but it has completely changed the way that I speak, because and that was one of my goals in doing it, was I wanted to just truly speaking in a way that could help people, because I've always had a lot to say, but I just get it out so fast that it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for people. And so honestly, I think that's one of my favorite things I've taken away from this, is being able to really try to resonate with people and how to like use those inflections to speak with people, so you can get them excited, but then you can draw them back in. So I'm still in the middle of that, but that's my favorite part about podcasting.
Well, Tyler, you did an amazing job here on the Author to Authority podcast. If people have really enjoyed listening to you today, and I would assume they would because I have, how can people connect?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, always a great place. You can find me, Tyler Tapp. There's not a whole lot of, or go to pantheon.fm, that website, where we teach people who have high ticket offers how to, for one, charge more for their offer and get their offer to a point where it should be, but how to establish a consistent referral system so you can successfully grow your agency and coaching business.
Thank you, Tyler. That was wonderful. Yeah, this has been
absolutely.
Kim Thompson-Pinder and Tyler Tapp on the Author to Authority podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you on the very next episode.
Bye, everyone.